Welcome to Lydia Fenet's Claim Your Confidence, a podcast that will introduce you to the most powerful women in the world as they talk about their own confidence journey. No matter what obstacles you face, Claim Your Confidence will inspire you, motivate you, and give you a roadmap to live the life you want. So, are you ready to claim your confidence?
Welcome back, everyone, to Claim Your Confidence. I'm Lydia Fenet. First and foremost, a huge thank you to my mom for always starting us off with a big inspirational kick. I am so excited to be in Rockefeller Center today, and on the screen with me today, I have an amazing woman named Soon Hagerty. I've had the pleasure of getting to know her as I entered the car world as the principal auctioneer for Broad Arrow this past year, and I can't even tell you how many people said to me when I got into the car world, there is one woman you need to meet, and that is Soon Hagerty. Soon is the SVP of brand at Hagerty and has played a lead role in transforming the company from a local specialty insurance company operating in a basement to a global publicly traded lifestyle brand for car lovers that joined the New York Stock Exchange in 2021 with a valuation of more than $3 billion. But there is so much more to this story. Soon, welcome to Claim Your Confidence.
I'm so excited to be here. I think the same for me when we were looking at potential auctioneers, and I said, we have got to get her, no question. And so I'm so glad that we've got to spend some time together.
I am too. But let's start at the beginning, because over the time that I've known you over this past year, where I've run into you at the car auctions all over the country, I've gotten bits and pieces of your story, and it's so compelling and so interesting. So start us off at the beginning, Soon. You grew up in Vietnam.
Yeah, I was born in Saigon, Vietnam, and it's interesting. I never realized the impact of my childhood until actually I was in my adult years. So I was an immigrant. I was one of the boat people in the 70s. And so after the fall of Saigon, my dad fought for the American side. And as you can imagine, we were not welcomed afterwards. And so he would have had to join what they would call a re-education camp. Technically, there's no education that actually happens. And so my parents said, you know what, we need to build a better life. So they picked up in the middle of the night, like many of the boat people, and left all their siblings, their parents, and we spent 6 months in a refugee camp in Indonesia waiting for our papers. We were sponsored by my uncle, who spent 4 years at $500 a month in savings to get us to the United States. So we came in late 1979 when I was almost 5, and it was quite the journey. I was, at a point where when you're 5, you kind of start having memories and visuals, and so I remember the journey, not all the details, but it's like a weird memory that stays with me till this day. It's really built a lot of who I am.
And do you remember in those early years who you were? Were you a child who was up for the adventure? Were you scared? I mean, what were the feelings that you're having at such a young age when you're going through something like that?
Well, I remember it being a very crowded household. So, we had 7 kids in the family. So I forgot that part. So here we are leaving Vietnam with 6.5 kids in tow. My mom was 7 months pregnant, came to the United States in late November, and my brother, the 7th sibling, was born in February. So it was a crowded house. And so, it was really interesting to grow up in a big house, because you kind of build this resilience and this kind of thick skin, right? When you're literally you're sharing 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom with 9 people, and you would beat each other up, but then because you're so close to each other physically, you'd say, all right, what do you want to watch on TV tonight? Let's go get ice cream. So you kind of have this really thick skin, and sometimes that's really good, and sometimes it's not good. And it's one of the interesting things that I didn't have insight till I was in college, that not everybody can take feedback as well as you. It can't just roll off the skin. So I had to learn to be a little bit more sensitive to people's thoughts and feelings as I recognized that, growing up in a big family, you have super thick skin.
And it must have been incredible to watch your parents go through that. And then as you get older and really understand what they risked to take you all in that situation, so many children, such a young age, and move you to a completely different country. Did they speak English when you arrived here?
No, great question. They didn't speak any English. I mean, we arrived with, 6.5 kids in tow, $300 in our pocket, and no English. And so my dad, drove the newspaper truck that dropped off the newspaper bundles to newspaper boys and girls between 12 to 5 a.m. Then he went home, kind of helped us get to school, and then at night he learned English for a couple years. And so that's kind of our journey. My mom took care of 7 kids with really no help. So it was really an interesting journey. And it's interesting, people have said risk, and I think that's true, but it was more of, it wasn't even a question. You know, we had to do this. There was no risk in it in terms of how to make a better life. I'm just super proud of them. But what I've learned is really, I'm a forward mover. Like, they don't spend a lot of time talking about it. We've tried to ask, and they talk a little bit about that, but I think it's almost too hard for them to go backwards because they only had one path. So it's funny, my husband kind of makes fun of me because he says I have like no nostalgia. Like, he'll get me like a anniversary card, and then 2 days later it'll be in the trash. He's like, does this mean nothing to you? I'm like, it did mean something to me 2 days ago. We're over this, you know? And so I think what makes you great is also your biggest weakness. So you've got to always be thoughtful of like that oscillation. So I think their experience has really built resilience, but this kind of always forward moving path.
It's a great way to live, to really be looking forward and not being regretting things. You know, there are people who I feel like get caught in that cycle where they're constantly looking back. Well, when I did this, or when I wanted to do this and this didn't happen. But if you're always on a path forward, it's a great thing because it's only a possibility ahead of you, right?
Yeah, and I love that saying. It's like, regrets aren't from the things you do, it's the things you don't do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you mentioned college, but you had arrived in Fresno, California, correct? With the whole family. Yes. Tell me the path. Where did you get to college? Where did you go to get there? How did you know where to do that? I always find the story of immigrants who come here with so little, creating this incredible American dream real time, to be so compelling. So tell us everything.
You know, what's interesting is, I think because my parents worked, they both had to work to kind of keep us afloat, is I have like a little bit of, I wouldn't say PTSD, but I don't remember the color and the details of things. It's like, I knew I had to fill out my college forms. I knew I had to figure out what to do. I mean, and my parents are lovely, amazing people, but there wasn't a lot of detail in my life where my parents could regurgitate, like, remember when you did this? You know how your parents fill in memories for you? I didn't really have that. All I knew was that I loved storytelling. I loved learning. So I had 2 paths. I either wanted to be in communications, PR, or I wanted to be on television, to be a broadcaster. And so I studied communications, and then I really loved people. And so I have a degree in psychology, and I did some classes in criminology as well. So I think people are fascinating. They're great. They're crazy. There's so many crazy stories. So I just love dissecting how the human mind and soul works.
And that all really comes down to storytelling at the end of the day, doesn't it? That's how you tell stories. You learn about people and then create that image for other people.
You know, my first class was Psych 101, and I was just obsessed after that. Just so many experiments in class about like your personality and who you are. I really gravitated towards psychology.
And so what did you do when you left? Did you already know that you wanted to be in communication, so you were looking for something next step, or how did that come to you?
Yeah, I have this other kind of weird thing too. I actually love live events and live sports. And so part of my internship when I went to Fresno State is I interned for the Fresno Falcons, which is a hockey team there. And I loved halftime promotions. And so I would kind of started honing in on my communication and PR skills. I did that for a little bit. And I had this, like, speaking of crazy dream that I wanted to handle PR for the Lakers. And so I literally put my stuff in a U-Haul. I had 2 friends. We moved to LA. I didn't have a job, and I had this like silly notion I was just going to come work for the Lakers. And then so I ran into an old friend who had worked for Fox News as a sportscaster, and he said, "You're nuts." This guy who's
so much for that dream.
I know, this guy who's running PR for Lakers has been there forever, and you know, there's only one way you're going to replace him: either he drops dead or retires, and neither of them are probably going to happen. So I thought, okay. But you know what I did do is I found a connection, and I ended up working at a TV station for a year and a half, and I really enjoyed being in the broadcast world. And I was an assignment editor and a field producer. So again, storytelling, I was out chasing stories. And so what I would do is assign a cameraman and a reporter, and then I would go on the scene and kind of help produce some of those stories. So that was really fun. But I also wasn't sure whether I wanted to be in broadcast or I wanted to be more on the communications side. So I did a little bit of double duty. I worked at a PR agency, happened to be an agency in the automotive luxury world, which I fell in love with the car world after that. And it's not so much that I'm a car person in the sense I know how to take a car apart and put it back together, but it was more the people. There's so many, and Lydia, you now know this. The people
I'm getting to know this, yes.
Are fascinating, right? They're entrepreneurs, they're creatives, they're doctors, they're attorneys, they're astronauts. They're like this amazing group of people who have this one common passion. So, I kind of went from, communications to really on the PR side, and it all comes back to storytelling and people.
What brought you into the car world? What was your first role once you were there? You were representing these brands and you just sort of realized that this was a true passion for you too, this world, this car world.
Yeah, I think it's, I was really immersed. I loved living in LA. One of my first clients was the Peterson Automotive Museum. It's Bob and Margie Peterson. And he has a great story. He started Motor Trend and Hot Rod. And again, it was kind of this concept that it was a self-made person, an entrepreneur, right? And so a lot of car people are entrepreneurs. And so I just realized that it's not really the medium in which you're in. It doesn't matter if you're selling, fax machines or TVs or the idea of magazines. It's just the idea that people are built a certain way. And I just wanted to get in the middle of that. And so I thought, it was just serendipitous. It was an agency that I just really enjoyed being with the people. And I was never able to get away from it. 20 years later, I'm still in the car world.
It is interesting. I've said to a lot of people since I started taking auctions for Broad Arrow that a lot of times I can see a lot of similarities between the art collecting world from my years at Christie's and the car collecting world, because in the car world, people gather multiple times over the course of the year for different events. And so you end up seeing the same people either at the auctions or the rallies or the different things that take place. And I wonder, do you have any amazing stories that you can share from your time in the car world that would tell everyone who's listening right now a little bit more about this world that we're talking about? Because I know even for me, having only been an auctioneer within this world for 1 year, there are so many things that I can't even explain yet. I don't really understand them, but I know that everybody is completely obsessed with these amazing rallies that take place in Italy or through the hills of California. So tell us something incredible that you've seen during your time in the car world that you can share with us.
Oh gosh, there's been so many incredible stories. I think for me, it's just multiple stories of I found the car that I got married in, right?
Oh, I love that.
50 years later, right? And they said, I hope that, I'll always have my wife, but now at least I'll always have my car. So so many
That's a bumper
stories.
sticker, right?
It's the bumper story, a bumper sticker. I think there's like so many fascinating stories like that where it all boils down to what does this car represent about me? But it's also the people too. So I think Trent, right? He told me this great story, Trent Abbott, who runs a lot of our high net worth clients. It was just recent. And he said, listen, I just met this guy and I've started to do certain rallies with him. And through the Hawaiian wildfires, I told him that my sister lived there. But she's struggling with her family because they're in the travel industry and nobody's going there now because of what happened with Maui. And he said, you know what? You tell me what her Venmo is and I'm going to give her 10 grand today. And
wow.
And it's like, that's what car people do. It's like that, like, that's what you said. It's this connection of car people. So there's 1,000 stories, but I've never seen a story that's not great without some heart and soul. There's like this like heart and soul, and it's not just the machine. It's like, what does the machine mean and how does it connect to other people? So I think cars are about connection.
One other thing that you referenced at the beginning of this conversation was when you were looking at auctioneers that everybody thought it might be interesting to have a female auctioneer because there are no female auctioneers in the car world. Tell me a little bit about what it's like to have been a woman in this world that is mainly men for most of your career and what you personally and Hagerty is doing to incorporate women and to get them excited about this industry.
Yeah, I still, I think there's progress, but honestly, I think there's a lot more work to do. I think in general, not just in the automotive world. I think in the business world. I think there's pros and cons to any gender, right? And I think especially in the automotive field, I think it's a challenge to be a woman in this automotive field. I think, when you think about the history of the automobile, they're all stories about Henry Ford. They're all stories about men who've created this industry. So you've kind of got this back channel that you have to be working with. I also think, this kind of old philosophy of, working in the garage with my father, it's always a father-son story. So you kind of have to get rid of some of that history. I think for me, it's a life lesson. It's whether you're a man or a woman, you have to do the homework. So I always, as aspiring leader, I always showed up. I was never late. I did my homework. But then I think you have to be super observant because not all men are created equal, right? Mm-hmm. So sometimes I'd be in a room like Mr. Peterson, who started Peterson Publishing and Peterson Museum. He always was so kind to me, Lydia. He would say, "Soon, what do you think?" And I'm a 25-year-old kid. This is my first gig. And then you'd have other men where I could, in my 40s, they'd never give you the time of day. So I think it's not all men will act a certain way, but I think as a woman, you have to be prepared. You have to almost ultra prepare, and you have to be a bit stoic about things. You don't overreact, don't underreact, just kind of really pay attention to the room. And I think each situation comes with a very different atmosphere.
Yeah. When I took my first auction in Monterey last year, which was last August, so I just took my second one in August, I remember before I got up there, I felt very similar to the way I used to feel when I was a charity auctioneer, when I first started taking charity auctions, because there weren't a lot of women in the charity auctioneering world. And so I knew that I was already getting on stage with people, not that they had any preconceived notion of whether it would be good or bad, but I always felt like there was an expectation that it wouldn't live up to what they had seen. When in fact, what I knew was sometimes it just takes a couple of times of seeing someone do something differently to think, it's not good or bad, it's just different from what I know. And so I remember that first time getting up there, sort of calling my husband and being like, I have to be honest, I don't get nervous about things anymore, but this is a real, these nerves are real. I am feeling this in my fingertips and in my toes. And even standing up on stage for the first couple of hours, I remember I work with a reader named Alan, who is fantastic, and he reads all the details of the car, but we have a shared piece of paper between us for notes because we're both on mic for 5 straight hours. And I remember writing him a note somewhere between hour 1 and 2, and I just said, "Is this going okay?" with a question mark. And he wrote back, "It's fabulous." And I remember taking a real sigh of relief and a real huge breath at that moment and thinking, okay, so maybe this will work. Maybe this won't just be one and done, which it could very easily have been at that point. So I will say I've seen it all up front, and the car world has been incredibly welcoming and wonderful to me. So I thank you for that opportunity.
I was there on your first one. I saw every inch of it, and you know what? It was fabulous. And one thing I'll add is not just what people didn't know what to expect. I think it's a good thing. There was curiosity. There's curiosity about you. I think there was curiosity about a female auctioneer. And another thing I'll add on that story is when we're looking at the different potential auctioneers, it was men who said, I want Lydia because she's good. First of all, she's good. And she brings something different to the table. You were kind of our secret weapon. So I think that was super cool when they're looking at it. So that's kind of goes back to what I'm saying. It depends on the man, depends on the industry. But I think there's curiosity is a good thing. And I think it's a pendulum switch. Until you get more female entrepreneurs or more female auctioneers, then you start to see a little bit of rhythm.
Yeah, absolutely. You've always dabbled in creating philanthropic good. You created the Hagerty Drivers Foundation, which really helped to shape the future of car culture. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's really a foundation that's existed for several years, and it's got the different iterations. It's really to ensure that we preserve the heritage of the automobile, but thinking about the future. And so it's a foundation that is built within our corporation, and it's been really fascinating because one of the things that we've done is for the first time we put cars on the National Mall in DC in these beautiful jewel boxes. We generally do it for about 2 weeks in September, and it is amazing to see some of the responses. A lot of people who say I'm not even sure I'm a car fan, but these cars are amazing and their stories are amazing. Yeah. So we do things like that where we bring education about the impact of the automobile all over the world, but mainly focusing on heritage, the future, and then making sure that the next generation can have access to this information and vehicles. Another cool thing that we do is called License to the Future. So I remember when I was in high school, driver's ed was included in my high school program, including the cost, and now it's not. You have to do it on your own. It's $400 a piece. And so that precludes some people from being able to get their license for a while. So we said, okay, why don't we have something called the shop, which is our merchandise with our brand stuff on Hagerty, and a portion of the Safe Driving collection fuels License to the Future. So we'll give away 200 licenses to the future for kids getting their license in high school. So it's a little bit, preserving the past, but making sure that people really are able to enjoy the automobile for the future.
And so when we walk outside of the automotive world and look at the other ways that you have your hands in so many things, I mean, it really is incredible to see your bio. One other thing that you did, and I love this one so much, a believer in doing good by doing well. You're the co-owner of the Good Bowl. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's actually really interesting. When I moved from LA to Traverse City, there was not a lot of ethnic diversity or cultural diversity in terms of food. And I said to my husband, it's like, I just want a bowl of pho, hot noodles, Vietnamese soup. And I've always kind of thought, okay, the restaurant world's interesting. I love hospitality. And so I kind of developed a business plan, and it would be called Good Bowl. And I went to my attorney. I said, listen, I have this idea to build a restaurant here. I showed him the business plan. He really liked it. He said, well, do you have a chef? I'm like, oh, okay, good catch. And
I'll just need a chef then.
Yeah, he introduced me to a friend of his who is a chef, and he's Vietnamese as well. And we had this shared story. His family are the boat people as well. And so we went to California, his family went to Paris. And so we started thinking around this concept. So our concept is we build this restaurant to bring some ethnic cultural diversity to northern Michigan, but we'll donate $1 per bowl to charity as a way to thank the U.S. for taking us in as immigrants.
It's amazing.
And so we're 5 years old this year. We've raised or donated almost $175,000, so roughly $30,000 to $40,000 a year. And we do other charity events, but it's a pretty easy concept. I'm a believer in, if you make it easy for people to give, they will. Don't overcomplex it. Don't oversell it. So what we do is when, Lydia, if you came to the restaurant, you said, I want a pho Saigon beef noodle soup, we'll say, where do you want your dollar to go to today? And so we'll give you 3 options. We'll give you a local option, a national option, and a global option. I'm a big believer. It's not just local. You have to think globally as well. Yeah. I mean, we're all human beings. Like, everything that's going on in the world is not relegated to one space.
Right.
And so you'll get an opportunity to pick your charity of choice. We rotate it every quarter. And how we get suggestions is the customers will say, okay, what about Make-A-Wish? What about St. Jude's? What about this local? I'll pick the top 2 or 3 that are suggested, and then my employees actually get to vote on the final.
That's
so
amazing.
I get the community involved, the employees involved, and then every quarter we give out a check.
That's incredible. That's an amazing amount of money to raise as well over 5 years. I mean, that's, it's not huge dollars at first, but it builds over time. It's something I say to people all the time. Like, everyone always thinks it's about the big hit, but it's actually about the small work done over time. And that's obviously a way to show that. You have 2 stepdaughters and your daughter Ava. What are you looking to show them from your life? Like, what is your legacy for them?
Well, I love the name of your podcast and your book because I think it's all about confidence. I think so much identity, male and female, but I would say more so female, stems from how you view yourself. And I think a lot of it is around your confidence. So, and it was prior to us meeting, it's prior to your book. If you had asked me 10 years ago, what's the number one thing that you would focus on in yourself and others? And I would say confidence, because confidence, if you have confidence, you have a better chance to make great decisions about who you surround yourself with and what you do. I think everything in life stems from lack of confidence or insecurity. And I think it's neither, like, insecurity is not necessarily a bad thing, because you could actually do a lot of positive things with insecurity. But I think in order to be rooted, you have to have a sense of confidence about yourself. So I would say confidence for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. Because at the end of the day, if you don't believe in yourself, then who believes in you? You know, it's the person who looks the most confident, ultimately, who people look to lead, which really is, if you think about it, the hardest thing. Because if you don't feel confident and no one is choosing you to leave, it feels like a self-fulfilling prophecy in many ways. So a lot of times I'm like, you never underestimate like a big smile with your shoulders thrown back. That was certainly what I was employing my first time on a car auction stage. I will tell you that. Huge smile, shoulders gone back. Didn't matter what was happening. You could not have beaten that smile. I was just like, it's fine. Everything's good. Just watch what I'm doing and don't think about anything else. So I definitely believe that that's true. I said at the beginning of this podcast that you and your husband really built Hagerty from an insurance company to a lifestyle company. Can you tell us about that journey? There's so many entrepreneurs who listen to this podcast, and I get so many amazing DMs afterwards asking questions about, what are the brass tacks? What does it take? How did that vision occur?
Yeah, I mean, Hagerty's also a great entrepreneur story. Mikhail's parents, Louise and Frank Hagerty, started in the basement of their garage, and will be 40 years next year. So it's quite, it's definitely not been an overnight success. It's taken years to build this, but it's this consistent drumbeat of, first of all, people. Mm-hmm. Everything in life is about who you surround yourself with. So I think this family concept of treating people like family and really creating a space for them to grow and thrive, I think that was paramount for Hagerty, and I think it still exists today, even as a public company. I think it's about like tapping into what problem are you trying to solve? Mm-hmm. And I think the problem we are trying to solve is, how do we build a business in a way where we help people enjoy their passion, and their passion is cars. We didn't invent the automobile, right? Yeah. We didn't invent passion. What we did was we connected the pieces. And it's really around building a brand that people can surround themselves with. I mean, if you think about our primary revenue source, it's insurance. But I'm pretty sure that you wouldn't interview me for about 40 minutes around just insurance. You're probably wanting to talk about, like, what does Hagerty stand for? And what Hagerty stands for is helping people enjoy the passion and surrounding people with great customer service and a great brand. So I think it takes a lot to build an enduring brand, and we're just, partway there. I think somebody like a brand like Disney is so inspiring to me. 100 years of just this culture. It's just amazing. So I'm a big study of enduring brands, but every single thing I've learned, it's about people first, and that's Hagerty.
Certainly. I've felt that. I mean, Broad Arrow was purchased, I think, 9 months after I started working with them by Hagerty. And obviously we had crossed paths before that, but that's definitely always been the reputation that you've had, even the Broad Arrow team, and by extension from me coming in a couple times a year to take their auctions. You talked at the beginning about this idea of the future and always looking forward. And you started the Boundless Futures Foundation. So I would love to learn a little bit more about that, because it really is all about financial support and leadership resources to aspiring female entrepreneurs. And I just went to something at the UN where it was the Women's Entrepreneurship Accelerator, where they were talking about the fact that there's a $1 trillion gap in entrepreneurship money for females. So tell us how the Boundless Futures Foundation is trying to solve this issue, what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a really interesting stat. I mean, another one that I found really enlightening is when you look at all venture capital, only 2% go to women.
Yes.
And yet nearly 50% of businesses are owned by women in the U.S. Yeah. So they're figuring out, really. They're figuring out how to make it happen, right? Yeah. They're either funding it themselves, which means they can't take as much risk. They can't grow as fast because they have this conservative cash pool in which they can pull from. So I think that puts them at a disadvantage, that they can't borrow or be invested in. So they kind of have to do everything grassroots, which is not necessarily bad, but it's a longer path to success. It's a longer path to growth. So, for me, I think if I could just give them a bit of that nudge, I think they can take a much further leap. And so, like, the 3 pillars for us for Boundless Futures Foundation is based on empower, embrace, and elevate. Empower is we'd give a individual up to $25,000 no strings attached grant for them to start their own business.
Wow,
The caveat is this business needs to be rooted in social enterprise. So if you want to start a business that helps solve a social issue, we're happy to be able to look at your business plan and be able to give you that grant, a no strings attached. The second part of the foundation is this concept of embrace. I think one of the I've started 3 businesses, and I have to tell you, I think it's one thing for capital, it's another questions. So, I mean, when I started my first agency, basic questions. Do I start an LLC? Is it a S Corp? What's my HR policy? All those things where, yes, you can look it up online. Yes, you can ask people, but to have a network of women who've done this before on speed dial. So that's what Advisory Circle is. I have 4 Advisory Circle members who've started their own business at a broad range of expertise that you can call and say to one of them, to Jessica Sullivan, okay, Jessica, here's my business. What type of enterprise should I list it at? So and then the last element of Boundless Futures is Elevate. So what we'll do is we'll also give grants to nonprofits that also help female entrepreneurs. So it's kind of a 3-pronged approach to Boundless Futures.
And how can someone find you if they're looking for a grant or if they're looking to get involved?
Yeah, so they can follow us on social media or boundlessfutures.org, and everything is outlined to what the criteria is, and it's a pretty easy grant process.
Well, between your SVP of brand for Hagerty, your restaurant, and your foundation, it seems like you have quite a lot going on. So I almost hate to ask this question, but I also know that if you have a busy woman, she's probably the person who's probably doing 90 other things. So what comes next for you soon?
I think Ava is 11, so I want to figure out how I can really spend a little bit more time with her and to be able to carve out some time to really spend with her, but to think. I want to really think about how can I spend more time to create. I've had a lot of life lessons and I'm running so fast, Lydia, that is there time for me to be more of a thought leader? So maybe there's time where I can kind of reshuffle my life where I can be involved in some of the businesses, but not running the day-to-day. So is it starting a blog? Is it, creating content? I don't know. Maybe there's a talk or a book in the future just so I can get all the things out of my mind to be able to think about how I can give to others in a different way.
I love it when people say they think about writing a book, because my advice for people who want to write a book is write it. Just start writing, because people are always like, how do you start writing a book? And I was like, I opened up a Word document and just started writing and hoped for the best. And a lot of the things that I initially wrote never went anywhere. My best friend's agent, I will never forget sending her, she's now my agent, but I sent her, a story about a lemonade stand because I wanted to write a book on selling, and that's kind of where it all started for me, was this lemonade stand. And she was like, nobody cares about this. And, when I go back and read it compared to the first chapter of my book, which is The Strike Method, which talks about being backstage at an auction, I'm like, yes, that was a much more compelling story than a lemonade stand. But I just felt like there were probably so many people who had done something small when they were little that they held on to as that sort of first thing. But yeah, so I would say write the book, and, write as you go along, because honestly, and this is advice to anyone who wants to write a book, like, write as you go along, because you can't believe how many things in your life as you're living it become things that you can look back on and realize that there was a lesson you learned it. I look at The Most Powerful Woman in the Room Is You, and I think back to the years that I wrote it when I had these very young children and I was doing 2 jobs, and it was just nonstop, day in and day out. And I look back on that person, I'm like, who was that person? That is not the person I am now post-COVID. But it's just such an interesting way to be able to capture the parts of your life. And I think especially for your daughter, for Ava, it would be very cool to see her mom, who's obviously doing so much for so many, and be able to read through these experiences for the rest of her life. So I am giving you the push you need, and I will be expecting you to check back in.
Well, and it was never my idea to say, like, I'm going to write a book. But, the last couple of years, through all these different changes, I've had a couple people say, like, you have a really interesting natural story. It needs to be told, and needs to be told in a way where it's not about soon or my family. It's just about something that people can relate to, which is like, it's not where you start in life, it's where you finish.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of great stories where they start with literally $300 or nothing. And people use this term a lot. And it's not that I disagree with it. They say it's about the journey. But to me, it's more than that. It's about the finish. It's like, you can start from nothing and have a lot. And it's not about money. It's about accomplishment and success and confidence. So I don't know. I don't know what the medium will be, but it's got me curious.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to see where it ends up. Now, are you on social media? Is there another place where we can find you aside from the websites for the foundation and the restaurant?
Yes. I'm on Instagram at Soon Hagerty, and then Boundless Futures as well.
Well, I know that I will be following along and look forward to seeing you again at the Amelia next March for another auction. But I know that everybody else will look forward to following this journey because it is a remarkable one, and I know that there's more to come. I would love to pose one question that you were talking about when you were talking about Hagerty and just creating this company. When you said, what problem are you trying to solve? What entrepreneurial problem are you trying to solve when you create your business? So I hope that if you are working on something out there, you can DM me, you can DM Soon. It sounds like she's as amenable to chatting in DM as I am with this question. What problem are you trying to solve in what you're doing, whether it be in your life or in your business? And Soon, you look like you were going to say something as well.
Oh no, I think that's a great way to end this. It's interesting because we started this podcast talking about the automotive industry and kind of the female role in it. And it's over the last couple weeks, I've really been thinking about all the connective tissue. And there are some really positive things about the automotive industry being a female, and there's some challenging things. I remember, and this is very specific, after the Motorlux party that we threw in Monterey, which is a super cool hangar party. It's kind of a higher end party to kick off this big car week. And my team produced it. And we ran into this guy who came up to Mikhail and I at a Porsche party, and said, "Oh, I just went to your event at Motorlux. It was really, really great." And Mikhail said, "Oh, thank you. My wife Soon put it together." And he looked at me, and then he looked at Mikhail and started talking to Mikhail about it. And I thought to myself, after 20 years, I'm still dealing with this. Yeah. And so it kind of came full circle with Boundless Futures Foundation. It's like the problem I'm trying to solve is that women are just as capable running businesses, running teams, being leaders, and whatever we can do to make sure that there's more examples of that, I think it'll make the world a better place. So the problem I'm trying to solve is to make sure that, if you're successful, man or woman, that you get the recognition regardless of gender. And so I think at Hagerty, I think at Boundless Futures, I think at the Good Bowl, I think it's about equality in the right way. And so I'm excited to be able to tap into that.
Well, I could not have said it better myself. Thank you so much for your time, Soon. It has been such a pleasure to speak to you. I feel like I could talk to you all day, but I'm sure you have 100 things to do today. I'd like to also thank Joe, my super producer, who helps everything run in the studio, to Newsstand Studio, which is in One Rock Plaza. Please stop by if you're ever around on Wednesdays and Fridays. I'm usually in the studio. And to Rockefeller Center and Tishman's Fire for helping us create this incredible podcast. I'm Lydia Fenet. This is Claim Your Confidence. I look forward to dropping this on a Tuesday and seeing you again for many Tuesdays to come.